Hey guys, welcome back to the other side where we talk about trials, triumphs, and everything in between, because that's where we believe the magic lies in the in between. Today, I am really excited to bring you my guest because I believe it was honestly divinely guided. I never have two guests booked, and I happen to have two guests booked, and they both canceled. But I had just met Sarah Tees at the Whittier Chamber, and she is a grief, loss, and end of life coach. And I really believe that that's something that somebody out there needs to hear about today. So help me in welcoming Sarah Tees.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for being here. I'm just really excited. Like I told you, it's crazy how we met and you felt the same as you said. And yeah, so welcome.
Thank you.
I
Thank you so much.
yeah, I like to start, with people's childhoods because I think it's cool for people to just find out how, somebody was raised, how they grew up.
hmm
Not every like healer, had trials and everybody just lives a different type of lifestyle. So how did you grow up, Sarah?
Oh, I grew up in a loving home with two parents who loved each other very much. I
Nice.
have three sisters. I'm number three in the line of four. Um, and we all love each other very much.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was a wonderful growing up experience,
So,
but
oh,
it was fraught with um addiction and depression,
mm,
and those things have a way of seeping in and really destroying something beautiful.
right. Where did you grow up? What city?
In Whittier,
Oh, okay. So you're local.
yes, I'm local.
Yeah.
I've,
And when you talk about addiction and depression and stuff, was that from other family members or it eventually kind of seeped its way into your let's say perfect, home and
sure,
environment?
both and
Oh, okay.
both and so addiction is a disease of the brain,
Mhm.
and it is passed down, and depression, it certainly doesn't help
Right.
addiction. And so it manifested in relationships with various members of my family, and then in my father. So
Okay. So did it start with like codependency and then maybe turn into addiction, and are we talking about alcoholism or
alcoholism,
oh, okay.
alcoholism.
What are your thoughts on things being passed down in our DNA?
Oh, I think it's absolutely true.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's science behind that,
Right?
but I think there's also just lived experience behind that. Many people, I think, have this experience of things carrying on in cycles. And one thing I would say is that I would characterize the other side, for example,
Mhm.
of being on the other side of breaking that cycle, as much as on the other side of diversity, or on the other side of trials or tribulations. I think being on the other side of breaking a cycle of addiction, a cycle of abuse and neglect, a
Right.
cycle of is also part of that too.
Yes. Yes. And which is very important, right? Because we hope somebody eventually breaks the cycle
hmm
and breaks that chain of addiction or abuse or whatever else that may be.
hmm
So how long did your father suffer?
I think he suffered for the better part of his whole life. I mean, he was a beautiful person, and he had um, a deep appreciation for what the world had to offer people
Mhm.
in terms of nature, in terms of animal companionship, in terms of art and music
Mhm.
and relationships and spirituality. I mean, he loved all of those things very
Mhm.
much. But I think also he he always said that he was too tender for this world.
Oh, I can
And
kind of relate.
yeah, and I do think that the world can beat you up,
Oh,
and I think he felt beat up.
yeah.
I am speaking for him, so I should
I understand, but
characterize it
it's
that
really
way. But
interesting
yeah.
because I have the same thoughts about my nephew.
Yes.
I do. I
Yeah.
just think, and actually somebody came to my sister after and she just kept getting called by this boy. And I mean, eventually she found out it was my sister. This is after he had passed.
Mm.
And I believe something that she did say was it was just too much. The world was just too much.
And it can be.
Hmm.
It can be.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a hard world.
Yeah. And if you don't have the right tools and you don't
Mhm.
have somebody that can mentor you through the chaos, and
Mhm.
I mean it's ever changing,
It
right?
is.
It's just constantly changing too. So
It is. Change is the only thing you can count
exactly, exactly.
on.
And the
So
fact that we're all different.
that too. That everyone is operating with whatever their level of
Yes.
understanding is.
Their own perceptions
And we have no control over that
mhm,
either.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
you know.
And you know what, when I say how long did your father suffer, I say that with full empathy and grace, right? Because you don't want to say like, oh, he's suffering, make him the victim. But with alcoholics and drug addicts, a lot of time they are suffering.
They
That's
are.
why they are in the place that they are.
Yeah, and he always characterized his addiction, especially when he was sober, as managing his pain.
Mm.
Like it was he always felt like it was a coping mechanism that he kept losing control of.
I believe every addiction is.
Yes.
And especially with men. And that's why I love to talk about men, and again, divinely guided, because I didn't know where this was going. But our men don't like to talk about it.
Oh well,
And they
yeah.
hold on to all of this pressure and all of this, responsibility.
Hmm.
And they're not supposed to be like, weak.
Right.
They need to like be a man, right?
Right.
And suck it up and, take care of the family and take
Mhm.
care of the home and they carry all of this, but they need to learn that they have to talk about it.
Mhm.
And let me ask you, how did your father grow up? What was his relationship with his father? Did his father suffer as well, or he did?
Mhm.
How far back did it go generationally? Do you know?
Probably pretty far back, although there are dead ends in their genealogy because,
Mm.
you know, I believe his maternal grandmother was a cast off who was like left on a stoop.
Trauma.
Yes, and then or his maternal great grandmother, and
Hmm.
then I know that his grandfather was an addict. I never met the man. I know that my paternal grandfather was an alcoholic,
Mm.
and that
Hmm.
that it all of their um, it carried over from
Yeah.
all parts of the
Yep.
family and
Yep.
stuff. And so yeah, I think it was a struggle, and I think they did suffer, and I think that a lot of the reason why that happens is because we're only just now sort of understanding the effects that or the different diseases of the brain,
Mhm.
for example,
Mhm.
or disorders of the brain.
Right.
Right? I'm pretty sure my father was an undiagnosed ADHD
Mhm.
person.
I honestly
Yeah.
believe my ex was possibly bipolar.
Yep.
Definite
Undiagnosed, right? It
Yes,
was
and
just, yeah.
definitely ADHD.
Right.
Yeah, very much. you know, I'm
And
kind of a
those
little
things not treated and those things not addressed. And then you add addiction
Mhm.
or and abuse of alcohol or substance and or I mean it manifests in so many ways.
Yes.
It manifests in so many ways.
And it's really crazy that you brought up the grandmother, right? Being left at the stoop, or the
Mhm.
great grandmother.
Mhm.
I went to this event and there was a pastor, and I just told my mom this story. It was so crazy because she spoke about finding out, that the brother was adopted years later. He
Mhm.
was already older in his 30s. And then it turns out she finds out at the same time that she's actually also adopted.
Mhm.
And so then she finds her paperwork, and one of the pieces of paper says she's unknown, name's unknown, right? So she's unknown. And then another paperwork said that she was given up because she's unwanted. And then another piece of paperwork, just another, dig at her humanity,
Her whole
right? Her
existence.
whole existence.
Yeah.
She's unknown, she's unwanted, and she's out there, and she's saying, these papers, the world is saying I'm unknown, I'm unwanted, I'm this. She goes, but I found another book, and she holds up the Bible,
Yeah.
and she says, but this says in black and white that I'm somebody and I'm a child of a king, and and it was so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's like we can live in this world thinking what we believe we are because of generational, right?
Absolutely.
That generational lack of being somebody,
Mhm.
and then you raise your children with that lack of being important and being somebody if you
Mhm.
don't break that chain.
That's right.
And then you have that chain of these people feeling like they're nobody, but they need to know there's somebody
Mhm.
regardless of what the world says, right? And so what do you do in order for them to now start feeling like somebody? Where do you come in when where that lies in what you do today?
Oh, as more often than not, I mean, I'd love to have a canned answer for you, one that's really clear.
Mhm.
But more often than not, I come in when a person feels unseen or unheard.
Mhm.
And I've had several moments in recent years with people where they just look at me
Mm.
and I look at them and I'm like, "Are you hurting?" It's so, and it's
I can
because
and yeah, and every person's different, right? How
everyone's
you would
different.
approach them and how they
Exactly.
come in and how vulnerable they want to be or not be and
Precisely.
yeah.
And that's the truth of helping someone,
Mhm.
right? They have to want to be helped
Mhm.
because more often than not, most people don't want to admit that they need help.
Mhm.
They got it handled,
Yeah, for sure.
especially in this society. The perception that you got your life together, that everything is okay and you don't need support is so prevalent.
I'm getting tears.
It's okay. This
I knew they were gonna come.
Oh, no,
But,
I know.
because that's me, right?
Mhm.
I asking for help,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't know how.
Mhm.
I'm learning, but even the idea of it gets me emotional.
And that tells you that you don't often have the opportunity to feel seen.
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
it's not being seen, it's people wanting to see you how you used to be.
Oh god, we could do a whole
Absolutely.
conversation
Yes.
just on that
Yes,
because
because they want to keep you where they're comfortable.
because the illusion of control is where
Yeah.
people feel safest.
Yeah. So, yes, that's been my biggest.
Mm.
And it's actually I laughed when I told you, having you here is like free therapy for me because because, you touch on subjects that are real and for people asking for help, that's real.
Mhm.
And I know it's not just me. I mean, I'm in real estate.
Oh, it's
I mean,
every
there's so many people who feel exactly the same way I do, right? And that's the first thing they do. Like call your friends and family, ask them for help and you're like, "The hell?" Like
your friends and family don't necessarily have the ability to hear you.
yeah, well, yes, and they really don't. They don't even see you sometimes
Yeah,
in who you are. Like
exactly.
they see you who you were and you're like, "Hello,
Yeah.
I'm 54 now. Like I think I've been through enough to like know where I'm at."
Yeah. And that was a really interesting part of my grief journey. For example, I had 3 sisters. Each of us
Mhm.
had a different relationship with my father at the time of his death, and he died by suicide.
Mm.
And each of us had a different, like, visceral response to it,
So how many years
handled it
apart are you?
differently.
Let's
Um,
start there because age I think has, a lot to do
sure.
with it, right?
Sure. My oldest sister is 5 years older than me,
Okay.
and then the, second oldest is 3, and then me, and then, there's, 2 years.
Oh, so you're all very close in age.
Mhm.
And it was how you said your father did get clean though every once in a while. Like,
He had 10 years of sobriety during my childhood, from the time I was about 6 to the or 5 or 6 to the time I was 15 or 16. He was
okay.
sober.
So I'm sure you and your younger sister have a maybe better, stronger relationship with your father than your two older sisters.
Well, and that's interesting too because my older sisters were older during his years of sobriety. We were actually younger, and then when we were early teenagers was when he started drinking again.
Mm.
And my older sisters had moved out of the house for work and school, and
Mhm.
so it was my younger sister and I who had like a very different experience of him as
Mm,
a father when we were teenagers,
right.
for
Which is a
example.
very vulnerable age for a young girl.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Especially not to have your dad because he's the one who's supposed to protect you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, how did that affect you?
Oh, immensely affected me. And I was a daddy's girl.
Mm,
So for me personally, and I can only speak for myself, is I spent my teenage and my early 20 years
hmm.
trying to save him from himself.
Oh, I'm
And that was
sorry.
a very difficult road
I can
for
imagine.
me.
Yeah. Because it's not your responsibility.
No, and I came to that understanding and that realization before he died.
Mm,
And I feel fortunate to have had that because it would have. I do honestly feel like if I hadn't made that drawn that line around our relationship and said I'm not doing this anymore
right.
and walked away from it, that I would have run myself into
Uh,
the ground.
guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your mother? Where was she during all of this?
She was being a mother and an excellent one at that.
So they were still married.
They were married for most of it, and then the divorce. They got divorced when I was 18,
Mm.
18, 19.
Ugh, that was my age.
Mm-hmm.
That was really rough
It is rough.
because just like you, I had a great childhood.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful
Mm-hmm.
until I was 18. And then it was just like all hell broke loose. And then it was even kind of worse. I didn't know if I was worse off because you have this idea, or I had
Yes.
this idea of what marriage and family and things are supposed to be like, right? And then we grew up in the time of Leave It to Beaver and the Cleavers and all these
Yes.
other
Yeah.
happy
Sure.
families on TV.
Sure.
So it kind of leaves you really lost and confused and angry.
But I think every marriage comes to a point where it's like, do we just present as
Oh,
happy,
yeah, no.
or are we genuinely happy? And many
Yeah.
marriages end because the people in them don't find themselves to be genuinely happy. And
And I wish people could grow together, right? When they come to that place. Like I mean, I don't see why you couldn't. It
yeah.
takes work, right? But it's possible if you
Mm-hmm.
were just want to figure out how to get happy together again.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm all for people just being happy,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, whether
Mm-hmm.
it works or not, and you do it together or not. But life is too short to, especially like your latter years,
Mm-hmm.
kind of just existing
Mm-hmm.
and putting on a facade.
Well, and that's the thing about end of life, for example, is so many people come to the end of their life,
Mhm.
or what they know to be the end of their life, and look back. And who wants to have all that regret? Who wants to doubt whether or not they lived their life to their
So
fullest?
let's talk about that because I didn't really know you did that. But
Mm.
let's enlighten people, right? On what are like the top, let's say 5 things that, or I mean, if there's more, but that people really do think of at the end of life that maybe they wish they would have done more of or
Mm.
didn't, whatever it is.
Well, and I'm no expert, and I think it's
Well, from your experience
I'm
only.
sure it's for most people it is the same kinds of things. It's wanting to feel like they had made the most of their time.
Mhm.
It's wanting to be sure that the people they love are going to be okay without them,
Yeah. Oh,
especially if family is so important to them. I know I've encountered that with people I've cared for.
yeah.
Um, it's closure. It has to do with forgiveness,
Mhm.
because we hold on to
I
things.
know.
We carry it all our lives. It's stored up in our bodies and in
It's
our
very sad, and I believe
yeah.
a lot of that does create illness as well.
Absolutely it does.
It's like it festers in there, and then it
Mhm.
just becomes cancer or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
It's not migraines
It
or
starts as, ulcers and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
indigestion, and it builds.
shingles
Yes,
and all these
it
other
develops into other things.
wonderful things you can count on by holding on to the anger. I even notice like it changes people's appearance on their
Mhm.
face.
It does. It
It's really
absolutely does.
sad. And you
Yeah.
can tell that they've lived a rough life. Like they just don't look happy anymore at
Yeah.
all. And okay, so those anymore?
Maybe I mean, there are also people who come to the end of their life and they're very angry and they're
Mm.
very upset, and that's usually unprocessed grief,
Mhm.
usually.
Do they say what some of their anger is
Oh,
is
it takes a lot for a person to name.
Yeah.
It takes a lot for
You
a
know what
person
I've
to
noticed too
name.
is it's kind of crazy because sometimes people hold on to crap so long they don't even remember what it is. They just remember they're angry.
Well, and it's a self-fulfilling sort of perspective that you
Mhm.
get when, especially when you isolate yourself from
Mm.
actually resolving whatever that is.
What do you think that is? Is maybe like a righteous
I think
or
it's
it's different? They feed different reasons, different
I think at its core it's
purposes?
about control
Oh.
for people. People feel unstable if they can't predict an outcome.
Oh, true.
You
That's why a lot of people stay stuck. They stay stuck in fear because they don't know what's going to happen. They can't handle the unknown.
That's right. But they know that if as long as it remains unknown, I know what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah, true. That's exactly what
Isn't
they
that
say. Well,
wild?
they say exactly that. Well, at least I know what I'm dealing with. At least here I know what I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
At least with him I know what I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, I'd rather jump off the cliff and see what's over there.
Well,
Like
that's why
I want to
it's
see what's on the other side, baby.
oh my gosh, look at you.
Not on purpose, but it worked out. It worked out. But I do. I always want to see what's on the other side. Not like the grass is always greener on the other side, because I do understand like the grass is greener where it's watered.
Mhm.
But if you're unhappy and you're miserable and you've tried to fix it
Mhm.
and you've tried to, get things like together, then all you can do is take care of yourself at that point and
Mhm.
and fix yourself or your environment.
I think most people struggle with coming to terms with their whether or not they're worthy of the love,
Mm. Yeah.
and for whatever reason they deem themselves unlovable or not worthy of that love.
Yeah.
Um, the pastor you were talking about who found it in the Bible
Yeah.
and chose to pursue that life because that's where um, she discovered her
Yeah.
worthiness, you know,
Yeah.
and her self worth.
And a community.
And each of us is on that journey, even the men.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
We're all on that
Absolutely. And
journey.
they don't have a lot of places for them to go. It's really difficult. I mean, even me, like you want to hang out with godly women, right? But you don't want to be judged. I
Hmm.
mean, nobody wants to be judged. And you don't know like if that new environment or that new group is going to be judgy church people. We've all run into them,
Well,
you
yeah,
know.
I mean, because there's the perception um, of religion
Mhm.
and I want people to look at me and think I'm a devout person and I'm a
Yeah.
deeply spiritual person and I've got my life together, and so they can't know that I struggle with sex addiction or alcoholism, and they can't know that my marriage is a facade, and they
Yeah.
can't know that I'm suicidal, and they can't know all of but the truth is that God loves us. Well, I mean, this is where I go with it because I
Yeah.
am I am
Go
a
with it.
spiritual
I like it.
person. But the truth is that God loves us no matter what. And if we truly believe that, and if that truly is our faith, then it means that we have to love us all the way down to our deep imperfections too.
Yeah, which is crazy and hard in this world
Mm-hmm.
because everybody's trying to tell you what you think is crazy and,
Mm-hmm.
trying to sway your opinion and how you believe and,
Right.
you know, jade it a little like,
Yeah.
well.
I know I know that in the moments in my life when I felt like, am I crazy? Am I nuts? I must be insane. There's no way. Uh, Those moments when I felt like someone actually listened to me, believed me, and made me feel that I wasn't crazy,
Mhm.
that there was such relief in
Yes.
those moments. And it required someone else reflecting that to me because for whatever reason, I couldn't find that myself.
It's really sad, but it's so true. It's kind of crazy. God has sent so many people to me lately. I am not joking. And they all have all said the same thing. And I've been catching it and it cracks me up because I was like, wow, Lord, all right, you deserve it. You deserve it. So they say, why not? You deserve it. You
Hmm.
deserve it. And now I'm like, I deserve it. I do. But why does it take external?
Because we can lie to ourselves because that little voice in our head, the one that's not so divine,
Yeah.
that voice in our head, that in my head it doesn't shut up. It's so
Yeah.
mean and it
Oh,
doesn't shut up.
yeah. It's like the drunk monkey they call it.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mine's definitely on something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes.
Well, you kind of said you had that thought on your way over here before, like, who am I to be on a podcast? And I had the same thought starting the podcast. Why am I Who's going to want to hear me? But we never know who's out there listening. That one person who may need to hear that one thing that you said that's just going to make them be like, I do deserve it.
Yep.
I am worthy.
Yep.
I am. Who's this God that they talk about, right?
Wow.
That says I'm somebody. Let's hope that they search him up. Like, look him up, prove us wrong, right? That's what
It's funny because you're making me think of a lot of things at once. So forgive me if I'm
It's okay.
unclear, but it makes me think about another issue that I encounter often when I'm caring for people who are at the end of their life because they don't understand why they're still alive, especially if they're in some sort of chronic sort of bedridden,
Yes.
in some sort of chronic debilitating state, or that it's because they're not productive and they're not useful to the people around them and they're the burden and all of those things. And they keep thinking that means that they're a waste and that it's time and why isn't it happening yet? And I keep trying to tell them, like, you're having a profound effect on me.
Yeah.
In my life.
Get emotional again.
Yeah. Because
a lot of times it's not about us.
Right. That's right.
It's about the people that are being allowed to care for us. And yes, it's hard for the person that's ill. But yeah, and I only say it because I took care of my mother-in-law. And it was tough.
It is hard.
But man, the grace you find in that and the love and just the empathy and the enlightenment that one day that may be you.
Absolutely.
It's all incredible and horrible, but beautiful. Yeah.
Which is the other side too, right?
Yeah.
It's realizing
you're seeing them off to the other side.
Yeah, well, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was going to say recognizing the beauty of it is part of being on the other side too, because then part of healing is understanding that the injury or the suffering is really beautiful too. Or giving birth is kind of like this, where you your body goes through this this incredible experience, and then on the other side of that, you're like, this was so beautiful.
Yeah, that's why people have multiple kids. They forget about
they forgot about the previous
pain.
24 hours or whatever they went through. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could leave anybody, well, I mean, I don't want to go yet. We still have more story. So let's talk about your dad. You said he surrendered his life.
He did.
How did that go for your family as far as the pickup? Like, how did you get out of that?
Well, and that was different for each of us.
And yes. Yeah. And I was going to say, I hate to say it, right? But in some sense, there had to be a form of relief that he was no longer suffering at all.
Yeah. I mean, and there you find that with people who are dying of cancer too.
Yes, absolutely.
Or people who require a lot of your time and energy to care for them, and then they're gone. And in some sense, you're like, oh, that's nice because I don't have to do that anymore. Right. That's a really hard part of it. But at the time of my father's death in particular, I was not speaking with him.
Oh.
I didn't have a relationship with him anymore. And I had physically grieved him. And when I say physically, I mean I wailed like a baby. I cried until I had no more tears. And I hadn't had much of a relationship with him in the 3 years prior to his death. But my sisters had. And so they had a very different experience of his death than I did. And each of those experiences was unique to them.
Right.
And so I am very grateful that when it happened, we had each other in that moment. doesn't mean that we were able to be there for each other as we needed.
Yeah.
Where
Because you were each struggling with your own experience
exactly.
or not really struggling. Did any of them kind of any of your sisters were at peace, so at peace that it was I mean, that's just a
No.
loss though. Yeah, it's a
No. I
loss.
mean, I don't know that it would be possible. I think um you depending on how associated and how removed maybe it was less impactful
Mhm.
in that moment or something, but I ultimately, and it's almost been 20 years for us since his passing. um it'll be 20 years next year. I think that each of us has sort of had to deal with the impact of it. And that's the thing about dying by suicide is for that person, that's how they um that's
They made their
the only
choice.
it's the only outcome that they can imagine, that they can fathom, where they're finally no longer in the pain that they're in,
Right.
right? They wouldn't do it if they weren't so desperate for
Absolutely.
that pain to be over.
Yes.
Um, Nor are they in their right mind, nor is this a sound,
Decision.
comprehensive thought. Like, this is erratic, it is passionate, it is emotional, it's all these different things. And so you can't look at it as a reasonable person and attribute it to reason.
Well, and that's why I'm a mental health advocate, right?
Exactly.
Because it starts all with their mental health, the
It
alcoholism, the
does.
drug abuse, the
It does.
suicide, that it
Right.
all stems from
From other,
something mental.
yes,
Yes, it's
yeah.
like you said, the pain, the depression, the anxiety,
Or the
but that
grief.
also
Yeah.
stems from, or the grief,
Yeah.
but that also stems from something. And
Right.
it's kind of crazy when they used to say, get to the root of the issue. And you're like, get to the root of what the hell? And what was that? And then I started gardening. And then you'd follow that route and you'd keep following the frickin' route. And you're
Mhm.
like, when does this route
Mhm.
end? And
Yeah.
sometimes it just feels like it never ends. And then I got it. Like,
The
get to,
metaphor made sense.
yes, then the metaphor made sense. It's
Yeah.
like because the root can go generational,
It can.
it can go so far
So
back,
deep.
so
So
deep.
deep. And I think ultimately what we have to learn from each other is how um, connected we all are.
Yes.
And so even when we feel completely isolated and utterly alone, we're not really alone.
Right.
We're not really disconnected from everybody else.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy for in this day and age
Mhm.
for people to feel overlooked or unseen, and that's why it's so important for mental health advocacy. It's so important for people to have vulnerable conversations
Right.
with each other where they talk about the
Real life
nitty-gritty of
situations.
life. Yeah,
Yes.
and not always work and strive to paint a pretty picture for
Yes.
everyone,
Yes.
because those pretty pictures, there's no way that's reality,
No.
you know?
And even like you said, your home was beautiful.
It
You had it. I
was.
mean, that was your childhood. That was your
Yeah.
experience.
I mean, we could have used more money in our lives,
Yeah.
and I would have loved to have been homecoming queen or whatever,
Yeah.
but ultimately, it was a beautiful life.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful life.
But you can also change that narrative.
Mhm.
You could have also grown up with a whole different idea, right? Your life was horrible. Your dad was, you could have fell on that sword and you could have
Well,
been the victim for
and you're alighting on something, because if we're if we get to choose what the story is that we believe about ourselves and about the people around us, then that shows you where all the power is in
right.
healing. That shows you where all the power is in growth, and all the power is in improving your life, because the truth is only you are able
Yes.
to save you
Yes.
from you.
Yes, I know. It's funny. I did a real estate video and I was like, let me help you help you. Like, let me help you help yourself. Because it's the same. Like you said, we can't help them unless they allow us to help them.
And that was why I was never going to be able to save my father,
Yeah.
no matter how much I tried. And I loved that man so much, and I was his girl. I was his daddy's girl, and we were best friends when I was an adult, and we had such an affinity for each other and such a kinship, and um we always felt like we were soulmates in a lot of ways, like
Mm-hmm.
kindred spirits
Mm-hmm.
beyond our familial relationship,
Yeah.
because we saw the world the same way.
Yes.
And now I would love to talk about this a little bit because it's part of my journey. But now, even now, my relationship with my father has grown
I love
and
that.
developed into something quite beautiful.
You still have conversations.
I feel like
Yes.
he's with me
I believe
always.
they are. I
Yeah,
believe they are, and I believe if you ask for signs, you'll get them. And it's
absolutely.
just it's amazing. It's incredible to me. I believe I'm a big believer.
Yes.
Yeah. Some people think I'm quacky, but I don't care. Like I roll with the posse of angels and I know it. I mean, I have fashion angels. It's crazy, but it's
Well, I love the
true.
angels who put together this ensemble.
Thank
It's
you.
fast.
And I'm not even joking. It sounds nuts, but I'll be like, "Oh, thanks, mom." My ex-mother-in-law. It's just
Oh,
yeah, she was very
oh
fashionable
yes,
and I feel her with me often.
absolutely.
And I just think it's her way of saying like, "It's okay, mija. I know.
Yeah.
You're good. I got you."
And that's it, isn't it? Like we're not only are we so loved by this God the Father, but we're loved by everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone and we have such a connection to each other that if we can only see it.
I did a whole podcast on the connection straight from, the stars and literally
Mm.
stardust, right? And
Mhm.
how we're made with
Yeah,
stardust
we are.
and all of it and the circles and the crop circles and then when you think of the water drops, the
Mhm.
same all the same designs in our tree, the trunks and all these
Yeah.
things that are just so connected and
Yeah.
to the universe.
Yeah, there's beautiful imagery too of like, our fingerprints and
All
then
of it.
the rings in a tree and
Yep.
yeah, or the connections in our brains and how
Mhm.
much it looks similar to like the animated multiverse that these huge
Yes,
computers can draw for
yes,
us.
and the
Yeah, it's
galaxy
all
and
this it
the
all
eye
looks
of
the same.
God and
Yeah.
all these beautiful things.
So, and to me, that's indicative of there being a master design
Absolutely.
behind
Even in
all of this.
the numbers of flower petals, the
Yeah.
numbers of like it's
The
just
art of
somebody
nature and the beauty
mhm,
of yeah,
mhm, the beehives and they all follow the same type
this
of pattern.
pattern. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
So
Okay, so what next? So how did you get into coaching?
so that happened through my church through just the way I was finding I wanted to help people.
Mhm.
Uh having gone through so much grief in my life because of course my dad's not the only passing that I experienced. There were
Mhm.
other experiences as well, but also just having felt like I was on the other side of things and wanting to help get other people there.
Yes.
So there's a ministry training called Stephen Ministry, which goes into congregations and you teach congregation members how to care for one another
Love it.
during difficult times.
Yes.
So I went through a bunch of personal training, and I was able to develop in that ministry. I started caring for people. I've had what we call them care receivers. So I've had 5 caring relationships. 3 have ended with the person dying.
Mm.
Um, and
That is
then and then an invitation came to learn how to be a coach, and I didn't really understand what that was.
yes.
But really all it is sort of a structured conversation. Um, but it's a structured conversation where uh, I learned as a coach to be a really good listener and then to ask really good questions
Mhm.
for people. And through that, a person is able to process whatever they need to process and name whatever they need to name.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, grief runs the gambit. So when I learned that there was a specialty training for
Mhm.
specifically for grief, loss, and end of life, I was like, well, that's me. That's where I feel called.
Yeah.
That's going to be my niche. And so I went after it, and I did all of this during COVID.
Oh, good time.
Yeah,
You had time.
how I spent my time during COVID.
Yeah.
Others, people make bread, and I don't.
Yeah.
I train on
I took
Zoom
a class
to do
too.
yeah.
Yeah, during COVID.
So and developed and so now I have a private coaching practice which operates much like a counseling practice does. And then I run the Stephen Ministry at my church, and
And what church is that?
Oh, so I go to St. Paul Lutheran Church. We're in Fullerton.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll give your church a shout out.
Okay. Okay.
Well, that's where people could find you if they wanted to go and do one
Absolutely.
of your classes. Do you hold like a group
You
there?
know, I have. I haven't been able to keep it ongoing because I'm a mother and I have jobs and other
Yes.
things too. But I have done some small grief support groups and things
Oh,
like
okay.
that, and then also I've done a lot of one-to-one care, and that's really what my training is to do
Yeah.
one-to-one care.
I was going to ask you, how do you navigate the passing? Because I know you care for these people, right?
Mhm.
It's got to take a lot out of you. My niece
It
is
can.
yeah, my niece is also in the field
Wow,
of caring for the elderly, and I
that's
know,
tough.
yeah, when her patients are getting older, like she knows the time's coming, and then after the passing, it's just it takes a real toll on her.
It
So
definitely
how do
does.
you navigate that within yourself?
Um, so for me, I learned that I needed to decompress
Hmm.
after visits, and so um, I found I found uh, like creating just a ritual around how I care for myself after
Hmm.
spending that time and that energy in that way.
Yes.
So I would, for example, there was one person I was caring for. She's a very special person, and but she had cancer, and it was a horrible, horrible death, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And every time I would see her, I would just be weighed down by this imminent, suffering that was
Yeah.
happening for her. And um, I there was an antique mall nearby, and I would just go and walk around the antique mall and just sort of delight in little things.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of became a ritual of mine with her where I would visit with her and then I'd go to the antique mall
Yeah.
and I would just
Yeah.
walk around and find things that delighted me to look at
Yeah.
and pick up and things and it allowed my brain a chance to process what I was thinking or feeling.
Yes.
I also have many people in my life who I can call and talk to if I need to process what my thoughts are. And this is like one of the key things is that we need to be able to actually speak what we're thinking and feeling or put it into writing,
Yeah.
articulate it in
Yes.
forming sentences.
Yes.
We've got to get past like whatever
The loop.
the loop is in our
Mm-hmm.
heads. And so to have someone to say it out to, um, or I mean, some people that's why they do podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some people have to have a girls' night every week.
Yes.
And, or, you find those places where
Mm-hmm.
you're able to do it, but it's just because it enables you to articulate the thing that you need to
It
say.
is really why I have a podcast.
I'm sure it is. And that's a really healthy way to
Yeah.
do things.
Well, because I needed to articulate it and I needed to work through it, but then I
Yeah.
also knew the healing in it. So I needed other people to feel the same healing and to
Mhm.
feel the same, like, to be able to work through it and talk about it and just
Yeah.
get it out, right? And now it's out there. And now what? Like, did you die? Like, still alive, did
No.
catch on fire, right?
Everybody's okay.
Yeah, everybody's okay. Yeah, and then the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Mhm.
And then the easier you just kind of flow through life, I've realized. Like
Mhm.
my life's getting easier because I'm getting more comfortable in really who I am and what I'm about and there's no secrets, right?
Well,
'Cause I'm just able to live.
and along the way you're acknowledging your truth. And maybe it doesn't stay true forever. Like,
Life
but
changes, right?
just to be able to sit there and say, like, I'm in a horrible position. I
Mhm.
am not loved right here in this relationship, or or I don't feel worthy of love. Why is that? What
Yeah.
am I
Yeah,
telling
yeah.
myself?
Right.
And then to move on from that. And
Mhm.
maybe today it's a completely different story and you are fully loved by the person you're with and you are worthy of love and you
Yeah.
know it and and you're chasing after that now
Yeah,
because
and your whole life changes when you start thinking differently.
absolutely.
And but it just starts with, it's crazy because I was talking to somebody and I was like, why are you allowing them to treat you like that? You deserve better.
Mhm.
But that's because people are telling me I deserve it, right? And then in turn, I'm able to tell somebody else you deserve it.
Yeah.
And really, that's how the world goes. And so it's like, you deserve it. You deserve it. Where's the camera, Solomon? You deserve it. You deserve it, right?
Mhm.
We all
Absolutely.
deserve it. We all deserve to be happy. We all deserve to be loved. We all deserve to be successful. Money isn't evil. Money makes the world go round. Somebody asked me that the other day, like, "Oh, is money that important?" Yes, because I can't do what I do for my foundation without money.
That's true.
So, it's just how we think about it.
Mhm.
Money isn't the root to all evil. People can be evil, but not all people are evil either. So,
And that all stems from our relationships with those things and with
right.
those people.
And how we were raised and
Mhm.
how we were taught and what we were told, and it applies to everything.
Yeah. I think the more you grow and mature as a human being, the more you realize that it's relationships and and the need to make those and cultivate those connections that help you be happier
Mhm.
than any one person or any one thing can make you,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
yeah. I during COVID I took a class. It was I don't even remember the name, but it was from Yale University, and it was all about what people think makes them happy as opposed to what truly makes them happy. And they found that experiences and time with people
Mhm.
makes everyone more happy than things.
Mhm.
It's the memories.
Yes.
So, taking it back to
Mhm.
the deathbed, how are most people that you've experienced, their thought about the time they spent with their family?
Mhm.
Were they happy about it? Did they wish they spent more? Did it even come up?
Oh, sure, it comes up. Um, I think I think more often than not, people are concerned with being able to sort of feel like they can be assured of someone's happiness after they're gone.
Mm.
You know?
How they'll move on as opposed
Yeah.
to how they were when they were here.
Yeah, I think because I think especially if and I'm fortunate in that the people whom I've helped at the end of their life
Mhm.
have all been people who had, family.
Nice.
Um and so I think in those circumstances especially people are always sort of concerned about how they'll carry on without them and will they be able to manage and are because we want people to live their lives and find
Mhm.
contentment um and be assured that everything's going to be okay even though they don't know and that kind of
Yeah.
thing and that's so I find like near death experiences
Mhm.
really fascinating because I feel like the more I care for people who are dying the more I witness that veil
Mhm.
between this life and whatever happens after this life and I feel more assured of of the eternal existence of our consciousness,
Yes.
and whatever that is, our spirit, our
Mhm.
soul, and I feel more and more assured of that than anything, and so which is where my faith plays a role in my
Right,
life, and where,
absolutely.
but also where I find myself having that perspective on things more and more.
Yeah.
Like so when I'm coming across someone who is obviously in need, I try and be very conscientious of the fact that um I am helping someone's soul. I'm not really because I can't cure cancer,
Right.
and I can't fix a broken marriage and I
Mhm.
can't I there are no tools that I have in my toolbox that are going to stop a person from being addicted to something.
Right.
But um but I know where their pain comes from.
Mhm.
It comes from this life, existing in this life and the relationships that they have and whether or not they've been able to name their pain and name their
Mhm.
grief and
And that's number 1, right?
yeah.
That's it, being able to name it.
It's such powerful work to be able to say like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. I'm just really lonely."
Yes.
Or, "Oh my
And
god."
to admit it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. To admit it because
Mhm.
it's kinda sad, right? People feel sad, like, "How could I say I'm lonely?" And sometimes they're lonely and they're
Of
surrounded
course they
by
are.
people who
Of
love
course
them.
they are. You can be lonely in a full room of people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So how do you help those people?
Well, and part of it is
Or is it
just
again individual?
it's very individual,
Yeah, yeah,
right? There isn't because there's not a quick fix for this stuff.
right.
Ultimately, you need to say something out loud.
Okay, so I have a question.
Mhm.
Let's say, because this helps, right? People, because sometimes people will go to counseling, they'll be like, I didn't feel nothing. It's like you went one time. Your life isn't gonna change after
Yeah.
one counseling session. So
Yeah.
how long would you suggest is a good amount of time for someone to see a counselor that they're comfortable with? Because I know you can see a counselor and not like them. We don't all click.
No, for
And
sure.
so, maybe they see 3, right? If they don't click with the first, then try another one. But then once they find that person that they feel they click with,
Mhm.
how much time do you believe is a fair amount of time for them to give that person to help them start navigating whatever they're going through?
I wish there was like a clear
Again, not
answer for that because it's unique to each person and their level of emotional maturity, their level of their own understanding and
true,
things
and
like that.
willingness to get,
And willingness is key.
yeah.
So if you're because you can go to counselors for years, but if you're not willing to crack
Yeah.
and open up to them, then every effort they make is sort of futile.
Yeah, well, that's like the forever student, the forever college student.
Right.
Yeah, you can go to school for years,
You
but
can.
unless you're going to pull the trigger and get a job, you'll never know if anything you learned is working.
Yeah, which is again that predictable loop that you put
Mhm.
yourself in so that you can control the outcome. You know it's not going to help, therefore it's not going to help.
That's so sad
Yeah,
because I notice that in some people, sometimes myself, right? We self sabotage
exactly.
because it's like more comfortable, and
Mhm.
and then it's like, okay, you see the loop, now
Mhm.
it's time to break it, cut it out, like you know
Yeah.
what you're doing.
So I think if I was going to prescribe um anything to do, any
Hmm.
one thing to do, it's be curious.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
And then it like
Because you know what? Um, that's what's helped me. There's things that people say, right, to do and I painting, art
oh
therapy, like,
sure.
but I didn't know that. They're just all things that I've done.
Mhm.
And I am curious, George. That's why I think like the podcast works great for me because I
You
am
get to put all these feelers out
yes,
there.
and I'm also innately curious when I'm having a conversation.
Mhm.
So it makes it easy for the dialogue.
Mhm.
And so that's really good. Be more curious than afraid.
Well, and with curiosity comes bravery.
Yeah, but we've always heard curiosity killed the cat.
Uh, yeah.
But those are like simple little blocks, right? You're saying be curious, but all their life they heard it killed the cat, and they might not even know that. Like I can't be too curious.
Mhm.
You know.
But but you have everything in life that is worth anything for people. It
Hmm.
came with risk,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, because like every intimate relationship you've ever
Yes.
had was a risk, a leap
Yes.
of faith in that other person.
Hmm.
Um, if you choose to have a child, you're putting your body at risk.
Yep.
Because there is that element there. And anything,
I mean, just
taking a
walking
job.
outdoor. Yeah,
Yeah.
they say people die right around the block from their house. They
And
get
they
into car
can.
accidents,
And they
and
can. And
so.
the sooner we recognize that we cannot control, and the sooner we recognize that in order to live this life, we have to be curious.
Mhm.
And the sooner we recognize that these are the only ways to grow and learn and be better for it,
Mhm.
you kind of have to just let go.
So, do you believe we're put on this earth to pay it forward, to help others?
I do in a way. I think pay it forward is a very nice um way of looking at it.
Mhm.
I think that um I look at it as a more universal thing. We are all connected,
Mhm.
and without any one piece, the connections they alter and they change, but something's missing.
Yeah.
That's why it hurts so much when people we love take themselves out of the equation, you know? But even that act is part of the connection. And again, like I said, my dad's passed, but he's still here with me.
Mhm.
He's still part of my connection to things, and he's still connected with me and my family and my sisters
Yeah.
and, all of
Oh,
that.
all of it.
So,
I totally agree.
yeah.
My sister, the symbol for my nephew is a wolf because
Mm.
that was his tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
So all his shirts, they have a wolf, and she just went to Mexico with her friends, and on their Airbnb garage door was painted a wolf.
Holy cow, that must have floored her.
It did.
I bet.
It did because I get hearts, and I know it's him,
Yeah.
and I know it took her a minute to like get on board with it.
Sure.
But I think she's kind of seen it now.
Oh,
Like it's not
yeah.
coincidence. Like he wants you to know they're still here.
Yeah.
They are here.
And
it's-
for like all kinds of symbols
Mhm,
and meanings
mhm.
and things like that's the thing about it's kind of hooky to see signs and
Yeah.
things or whatever, but like it's what we're really talking about is awareness.
Yes, and like you said, the connection.
Yeah.
We can believe we're connected or we're not. I believe I walk with the posse of angels, and my joke is, do you think I'm better off for it or not? I think I'm better off for it. So, crazy or not, whatever they think, I'd rather be, crazy happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And safe. But it's been a real pleasure having you on.
Oh,
I have
thank
to say, I mean, as you can tell, her voice is so soothing. Jeez, I love it. But, where can they find you? Should they get on your Instagram?
Mhm.
Yes.
That's fine.
So, okay,
Yeah.
you can message her on her Instagram or email you. I'll put it in the description.
Okay.
Yeah. All right,
That sounds
guys.
good.
Well, we have to go now. But thanks, Sarah. I
Thank
loved
you.
it.
Oh,
And divine. It was divine.
I appreciate it. And one thing I'll say too about this opportunity is that I love being able to talk about it.
Mhm.
And the reason why is because so many people don't want to.
I know,
So
but it's
thank
reality.
you for the opportunity.
You're
to talk about it.
welcome. I'm
Yeah.
really glad you did. Again, divine,
I
because
love it.
I had no idea what I was gonna do,
Yeah,
and it's such in alignment to what we do here.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. It's amazing how many times we said the
I
other
know,
side
I know, I
for
know.
those drinking at home.
Yes, exactly. My friend told me to do that. I'm all, I don't want to promote
I
drinking.
know, right? I'm sorry.
But hey,
have a sip of water, everybody.
yeah, I know. But they would have had a good afternoon.
Mhm.
All right, guys. Bye.